I just want to go on record first by saying that it is turbo inconvenient having two races that are at unreasonable hours. Australia was midnight local time for me, I think. And then China was 3:00 in the fucking morning. And it's just like, absolutely not. Oh, and the sprint race was at like 11:30. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting maybe I'm getting weak in my advanced stage, but I absolutely despise this early run of races and the fact that all of them are at shitty, horrible hours of the night. $10 says that you didn't bother to stay up for any of them, did you?
I mean, I stayed up for the Australian Grand Prix, but not the Chinese Grand Prix. I mean, I literally stayed up for the Australian Grand Prix last year, and then when it was like a shit show, I'm like, never again. I'm not ever staying up for this fucking race. And Lord and behold, I did it again. I don't know why. I think it was just because Sebring had ended just a couple hours ago, and I'm like, why not?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Chicanery. We are your hosts. I am Danny, and of course, I'm joined by JT.
Hello again.
And so we are here on the back of F1 and their seasoning opening doubleheader. So Australia, then China. But more after this message. By now, I'm sure you, our dear listeners, are all very familiar with Homefield Apparel. They're the purveyors of some excellent collegiate apparel. The boys over on the main pod always go nuts for their football and basketball drops. But Homefield is also a longtime supporter of this podcast. Last year, Homefield launched their first season of Speed with Hendrick, Little 500, Aero McLaren, and Indy 500 collections, with the Indy 500 collection being a particular favorite of mine. Well, they're back for another year of Season of Speed with a new Hendrick Motorsports collection with neat Rainbow Warriors, Jeff Gordon, and City Chevrolet merch, and a 3-car collection devoted to Raising Hell and Praising Dale, both of which are already available. Now, with the obligatory joke out of the way, there's also a new Little 500 and Indianapolis Motor Speedway collection for all of those who celebrate the month of May. So head on over to homefieldapparel.com and be sure to use code VLV25 to save 15% off of your first order. Now, funny enough, at least for the Australian news there, well, we kind of covered a lot of that in the lead up to the kind of F1 season opener and our kind of season review that we did a few weeks ago at this point. So if you're certainly curious about that, I won't. You should go and listen to that in full. Certainly, the cliff notes is preseason testing, McLaren spooky fast, Red Bull in trouble, Ferrari and Mercedes kind of unknowns. That's kind of the cliff notes version of all that, and the sort of the run up to. But getting into the actual race weekend itself, is that, well, the rookies caused as much chaos as sort of was expected. Particularly Ollie Behrman. for as much as he had a strong position of kind of super sub, filling in for Steins in, I think that was Bahrain, following appendicitis, and then Magnussen when he got penalty pointed into the Shadow Realm for Baku. But for whatever, apparently all of that just left him because other than, I think, lap time set in free practice, Ollie Behrman did not set a time for the rest of the weekend until the Grand Prix.
I mean, it's Haas. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know. To me, I feel like that's a little bit on brand for who we're talking about here.
To be fair, you absolutely have a point. Now, I guess I would counter that by pointing out that Haas's form last year, particularly kind of second half of last year, was genuinely pretty good. Like, they were looking like they would be a strong contender for best of the rest when we were closing out the season last year.
And also, aren't they? They're aligned with like Toyota now or some shit. So
yeah, it's a technical partnership. It's really weird. It's like Haas is like the most cosmopolitan team on the grid right now. Of course, Haas and their, let's see, headquarters is in Kannapolis, North Carolina, but then they've got their engineering facility is in the UK, but then their powertrains is in Italy because they get powertrains from Ferrari. But now they're using Toyota's wind tunnel in Cologne. So
Mr. Worldwide.
yeah, I don't know. But for what it's worth, it didn't do them a lick of good because the Haas is just dog shit slow this year. It's like all of the gains that they made last year were all completely undone this year. Because genuinely on Australia, the Haas was the slowest car. Because while as much as I talk about Behrman, Ocon really didn't fare any better, which is well, it is what it is, I guess. But fast forward to race day, and well, it's a grim picture. The F3 race went on, but basically everybody binned it. And the rain got so bad that the V8 Supercars race got canceled. The Porsche Super Cup race got canceled. And I do believe the feature race in F2 got canceled as well due to weather.
And hearing all of that, I was so certain that the Australian Grand Prix wasn't going to happen.
So was I. I was much to the chagrin of my partner. I was checking my phone constantly throughout the evening, trying to figure out timing and if the race was going to get moved forward, pushed back, or quite what they were going to do. But yeah, I didn't think that I didn't think it would end up going forward. Or at the very least it would get delayed. But no, we get close to local time and it clears up a bit. I know Bernd Mailander did a few recon laps and found it to be quite slippy, which we don't talk about Mailander enough. It is very fun to watch him rocket around these road cars that are much slower than Formula One cars, but he leads the pack quite well. So just a safety car appreciation moment, I guess.
I mean, somebody made a whole fan cam for the safety car. It's really funny.
Honestly, that's probably about the only fan cam that I unironically kind of agree with. But at any rate, yes, Burnt is that's the real driver of the day. But at any rate, we go out, we do a formation lap, and Isaac Hadjar bins it immediately. He put it on the painted lines coming out of, I guess that's like T2, that's T23 complex, and just backed it into the barriers. Which, of course, obviously you have an aborted formation lap when that happens. But I have to say, I should have bet somebody money that something like that would happen, because I would be much richer for it if I had done. But yeah, but he got out of the car. They got it cleaned up, and had kind of a neat moment with Anthony Hamilton, Lewis's father, in the paddock after, which was really neat. For those of you who don't pay attention to the junior series, to which case, fair enough, understandable. Isaac really idolizes Lewis. Sharing the grid, and grid was kind of a meet your heroes moment. And well, Anthony was just being kind of a dad, which I think is kind of neat. But then Helmut Marko had to go and fuck it all up by being an old crotchety asshole and call it embarrassing. So take that for what it's worth.
I mean, to be fair, do we really give a fuck what Helmut Marko thinks? I mean, just given based off of some of the decisions that he's made in regards to his team, and also the fact that to me he looks like he's probably like a sneeze and a cough away from the grave. It's like I don't really give a fuck what you think. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Helmut Marko, I think, outstayed his usefulness a long time ago. But his insistence on hanging on, clinging on, is just annoying.
What does he even do?
At this point, I was doing some reading for some other Red Bull related things. Well, we'll get to that later. And truth be told, really, he's just a glorified consultant. So in theory, shouldn't be very difficult for them to go push him into a retirement home. And I don't understand why they just don't do that.
It's like, oh, it's embarrassing that he crashed and he was upset about it, just like anybody who was a rookie and there are like this is their livelihood, their career, they're upset about it. It's like, okay, grandpa, let's get you back in your room.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also worth noting that Helmut Marko's Grand Prix career wasn't anything to write home about. Part of why he's blind in one eye was because he binned it at a wet race, no less. And the resulting injury, it left him blind in one eye. So it's like that is the epitome of throwing stones from a glass house, honestly. Yeah, exactly. But yes. Though we would get a green flag lap in, well, kinda, because both Jack Doohan and Carlos Sainz would basically wreck in sympathy. Doohan basically had an almost carbon copy crash of Hajar's, and Sainz, it was when they were bunching up behind the safety car. It snapped and it killed him, basically.
I actually feel kind of bad for Jack Doohan because like I don't believe he's gonna be in that car after whatever those how many races they said they were gonna give him, where
6
they
or
were gonna
something.
like bid him off and put freaking Colapinto in the car. Like I don't think, unfortunately I don't see this going well. Which to be fair, I feel like some of it actually isn't his fault. Like I feel like some of it was just like kind of like he was doomed from the start, unfortunately. But again, like I do feel kind of bad for him a little bit. I can't lie.
Yeah, it's tough. We've talked about it a bit before. But Colapinto is very much Flavio Briatore's golden boy at the moment. And from what is understood, he wanted nothing to do with Doohan in the first place. Because when he was again brought into the team again under a quotes advisory role. He was like, Dylan, okay. So yeah, it's just unfortunately, Dylan has found himself in, like I said, kind of a shitty spot through literally no fault of his own. If Alpine were less dysfunctional, he would probably get a fair crack at that seat. But as it stands, it is unlikely that that is going to be how this ends. But we would fall into a little bit of a rhythm for a bit before Alonso looped it on the corner leading onto the back straight. Now, given the popularity of Alonso, I might have pitchforks at my door if I say what I really think.
Hang it up. That's what you should say. Hang it up. It's time. Okay.
Yes.
Somebody has to say it, but it's time to hang it up. Time to hang up the helmet, put away the race suit, and do something else that is not this.
Agreed. I completely agree. I'm going to be honest. I've always thought Alonso was kind of overrated. I just have. Don't get me wrong. The two championships were good because in both years, Renault was outpaced on car development throughout the course of the year, and Alonso was able to hold on to take the two titles. But basically, everything after that has been total shit.
I mean, there was that one year that he was with fucking the Honda McLaren, which with Stoffel Van Dorn, which was like, yeah, very forgettable.
Yes. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, so we had the first stint at McLaren, which basically Alonso was the one who narked about Spygate because he was pissed that he was getting his ass whooped by Lewis Hamilton immediately. Then he moves to Ferrari just in time for them to suck shit. Just to go back to McLaren later when Honda comes on board, which, I mean, we all know how that went. Then to go back to basically Renault for a bit. Oh, that's right. And there was another Renault spell actually within here. And he got pushed out of the team because of the Crashgate thing. That was 2009. And yeah, it's just like, it has just been bad career move after bad career move after bad career move. And he's always been flattered by having dogshit teammates. PK Jr. was not very good. I can't remember who he was alongside at Ferrari, but the fact that I don't remember probably tells you all you need to know. And now he's next to Nepo Baby Stroll. So, which actually, speaking of which, and I'm skipping forward a little bit, Stroll's form has actually been decent to start the year, and I am kind of frustrated because that means I probably have to retire the Stroll jokes that I make on a regular basis if he keeps us up.
What Stroll jokes? That he goes for a stroll? Like, that's his pace?
Yes. But at any rate, but yes, so Alonso, he would wreck. And we would get, on the other side of the circuit, we would get a fit of some rain that would catch out Norris, Piastri, and Verstappen. Piastri would come off worse and would end up getting spun and briefly stuck in the grass. And then this would bring out a safety car. And then not too long after this, Liam Lawson backed it into the wall as well. That's a rather auspicious way to start your tenure with Red Bull. And it's also worth noting that he was, I think, dead last of all of the runners when that happened.
I think that's accurate, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I think the two Saubers were ahead of him at that point. I mean, now granted, Bortoleto would bin it. Actually, I forgot to put that in the notes, but so he would end up placing ahead. Although, actually, I'd need to go back and look because he might have binned it before Bortoleto did. there were so many wrecks in that race that actually keeping track of everything that happened is a little tricky. Um,
I
but
actually thought the race was going to end up getting cut short because of the rain, because so
I
many
did
people
too.
were like spinning and got caught out by the rain, and it's just like, oh, well, this is going to be the end.
Yeah, I mean, now in the end, it would coalesce. We would get the race finished, with basically Verstappen right on Norris's gearbox to finish. Um, but um, but yeah, it was a chaotic Grand Prix. Um, and I guess I want to query you for a second about Ferrari's strategy choice with staying out on slicks in the rain, because that briefly promoted them to 1-2.
I mean, it's Ferrari, like to some extent, like which I don't know, like I'm not shocked, okay, because again, it's Ferrari, like they're known for kind of doing like bottling strategy or doing like completely like dumb shit. Which how great of them, how generous of them to give Lewis Hamilton the full complete package of the Ferrari experience, which is experiencing their strategy plays. I mean,
Yeah,
you have to admire. I mean, like, yeah, thank you, Ferrari, for doing that.
yeah, and it's worth noting that they were not the only ones. Yuki got left out on a similar strategy as well, because he had climbed his way up to like P5 at one point, and he and the Ferraris stayed out, and it dropped them all the way down the order. Because I think Yuki ended up finishing like P15, which was a result not at all representative of the pace he actually had on the day. With Lewis being, I think it was Lewis P9, Charles P10, or the other way around. They were basically finished together on track, so the difference is largely academic. But yeah, it is just as like, what the fuck? Because truth be told, Max stayed out a lap too late, really. Um, and it didn't cost him quite as bad. But Ferrari tried to wait out the rain, even though it was obvious that it was going to rain too hard for staying out on slicks for those extra couple laps to really be viable.
It's funny because they technically did something similar at Le Mans last year, but it was like kind of the opposite. It was raining, but there wasn't actually that much rain. And the move was to just stay on slicks and then just tough it out. But they ended up putting on wets and then they lost a fuck ton of lap time because obviously when you put on wet tires, like you put on wet tires and the track is not wet enough for wets, you're gonna lose a lot of time because the wet tires are slower. Um, it's kind of funny. Like it's basically they just did the opposite thing here and should have put wets on instead of staying on slicks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very dumb. But yeah, welcome to Ferrari, Lewis. But overall, this is a chaotic as shit Grand Prix. And I mean, it was fun. Well, at least I thought it was fun. My partner fell asleep about 5 laps in, so they clearly did not agree. But I thought it was fun. Um, and like I said, certainly, yeah, it was chaotic as hell. Um, which, as much as, we talk about this usually with sports car racing, it's, we're kind of like, okay, we can stop now. Well, that's pretty much what you need to spice up a bit of F1. Um, but moving on to the Chinese Grand Prix. So, but again, double header, and then this was a sprint weekend, um, which is like my least favorite thing ever. I can't stand it. I My will to live drops expeditiously when I have to write notes for sprint weekends. But at any rate, starting off with a bit of news, unfortunately, kind of cast a dark cloud over the weekend. Eddie Jordan passed away due to prostate and bladder cancer. He was 78 years old. Um, He was. This is kind of more my thing. I've been talk about it all the time when we talk about F1. Kind of classic F1 stuff. I just think is really really fun. And so Eddie Jordan was kind of one of my favorite people within that remit. Kind of take no shit. Irishman who put together a pretty cracking F1 team. Jordan Grand Prix sprung up in 1991, kind of through the ashes of his F3000 team that he was running that had been highly successful. And he took it and he made it something genuinely pretty cool. They were kind of the sleeper title favorite in, I think that was 1998, with Heinz Harald Frentzen and oh my gosh, I can't remember who the number 2 driver was that year, but it was genuinely, if it hadn't been for Frentzen wrecking at the Nürburgring, they might have been on course to potentially do it. But of course they didn't, and kind of there went that. But yeah, just a plucky team. And when Eddie sold the team and then kind of transferred into punditry, his interviews were always good. His insight was good. And honestly, I genuinely just think he was kind of a funny guy. So I think the world of F1 is definitely worse off for not having him. But, well, he did some cool shit while he was here. But moving on. The FIA can't seem to make up its fucking mind about flexible bodywork and when they're going to enforce these changes. Because initially, it was just broad sweeping changes after Miami, I think. Well, they said, lol, never mind, and actually issued a separate technical directive for the rear wing in the kind of mini DRS for this race. Now, if everybody is to be believed, then everybody's wings were fine, except for Alpine and Haas, which is kind of funny that the two most dogshit teams are somehow the ones that still basically had, quotes, illegal wings and still couldn't make it work.
They should just let them keep the illegal wings, because, I mean, fuck it, it's not helping them anyways, so.
No, this is true.
Really, I feel like it's really only illegal if, like, you make the change and you're actually getting something out of the change, like, it's actually benefiting you and you're getting more, like, you're getting quicker, you're getting lap time. But if you just spend most of your time, like, 15th, 16th, 17th, no higher than 10th place, okay, then I feel like it doesn't matter, honestly. I'd let it slide.
I would too. Because it's like, okay, you're cheating and still failing, so, like, who gives a shit?
What now?
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny. Everybody thought McLaren had maybe gone and ratted to the FIA. They held their hands up and said, no, it wasn't us. So it's not quite sure what spurred this additional technical directive from the FIA. But definitely, I guess something to kind of keep note. But meanwhile, Liam Lawson, he had an interview with the Telegraph recently. Well, it was ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix, so, well, no duh. But he was getting punchy. Because when Ags Yuki was like, okay, well, if they make a swap, I can do it. I can fill in the second Red Bull seat. I mean, it's the same shit that Yuki's been saying for like the last 5 years, let's be honest. Liam didn't like that very much. Because he went out of his way to shade Tsunoda throughout that interview, saying, quotes, "We were teammates in F3 and I beat him." Which is just like, okay, well, that's a thing to say. And I looked it up because part of me felt like that wasn't true. And also Liam's completely full of shit. It's not. Um, so they were both in F3 in 2019. Liam was racing for High Tech, and Yuki was driving at a Genzer Motorsport. So they were never teammates. Granted, Yuki did make a one-off appearance at High Tech, but that was just for Macau. And actually, Liam was driving for somebody else, if I remember correctly. But point is that Liam was 11th in the 2019 F3 standings. Yuki was 9th. So they were never teammates, and Yuki was faster. So, me when I lie.
I mean, I feel like I don't know. I don't even know why he would say that unless he just wasn't actually thinking. Because I don't really know if I'd necessarily want to lie about something that could easily be Googled in like 2.5 seconds to
Yeah.
check whether or not it's true or not. Like, I'm not saying it's good to be a good liar because it's not, but I feel like if you're gonna lie about some shit, I feel like you should make it like kind of a believable lie and not like again a lie that's like really easy for somebody to like figure out whether or not it's true or not.
Yeah, because I looked it up because, so it's worth noting that because there's little continuity between the junior seasons from one year to another, my brain doesn't hold on to standings the same way that it does F1 or frankly just about any other motorsport discipline. But even I was like, I don't think that's right. And so, like you said, I literally just fired up Wikipedia and had my answer in like 5 minutes. And it's like, bro, what the fuck? It's a very dumb thing to lie about, but kind of funny. And people are calling it out because that blurb made the rounds on social media, and everybody's like, well, that's not fucking true. So, yeah, I don't. I don't know what prompted him to say that. Maybe he got things mixed around. Because it's worth noting they didn't race each other in F2. Because Yuki went straight to F2 for 2020, whereas Liam did another year in F3 with Carlin Motorsports, if I remember correctly. So, and then by the time Yuki made it to F1, that was Liam in DTM, I think, was Yuki's first year in F1. So, literally, there was one season in their junior career that they were together. They were never teammates, and Yuki was higher up in the standings. So, just, it's like that audio, that Instagram audio, where it's just like, what an odd thing to say. And that's pretty much where I'm at with this. It's just like, okay. But I don't know. I think it is indicative of a man who already knows he's under pressure and is not handling it very well.
Yeah, I mean, probably. He's kind of cracking a little bit, but
More than a little. But in other news, this is granted mostly rumor mill at the moment, but it almost seems like kind of like Albon at the first, I guess, contract that Albon had with Williams, where he was effectively on loan from Red Bull, and there's some other instances too. It looks like Flavio could loan out Colapinto again. It's no secret that Flavio loves him some Colapinto, and is very eager to get him in a race seat somewhere. And so it sounds like he could be loaned out somewhere to get some more race experience before returning to Alpine when Jack Doohan gets fired into the sun by way of Trebuchet. But it's funny because there was an interview where he called Colapinto an asset, and in fact, that actual quote was saying that Colapinto was their most important asset, which is big words from Flav. So I'll be interested to see what happens there. I think some of the rumor mill was that he could end up going to Racing Bulls, which I guess that seems like the most likely scenario if Liam Lawson gets executed via firing squad and Yuki gets put in the seat, then there'll be an empty seat and Colapinto could go there. Or I guess if Hajar is just that shit that he gets canned, then I could also see Colapinto filling that. I don't know.
I don't know. I just think it's funny that they're basically pimping out Carlo Pinto, man.
I mean, it is quite funny. I I guess it shouldn't be super surprised because Flavio does do that. Um, Fernando Alonso when he drove for Minardi for his first couple of years in F1 before he moved to Renault. It was the same thing. So, like I said, this is not outside the norm for Flavio, I guess is the point that I'm making.
I mean, it's not. At this point, I bet freaking you're gonna have Colapinto like being loaned to like 5 different fucking teams, man. I
Yeah,
mean,
I could.
she's only been in F1 for like what, a year to like a couple months, and he's
Yeah,
already like been like passed around so many times.
yeah, he really has. But I think if anything, I think that's indicative of his talent. I think it's just with the weirdness in the driver market, just nobody really has a space for him. But I do think that everybody kind of wants him because he strikes me as kind of a diamond in the rough. I figure some time at a midfield or back marker team to kind of hone his craft a little bit and not in the shit show of a pressure cooker that was getting subbed in at Williams last year. And he could be genuinely quite good in a top team. But moving on to the Grand Prix weekend, well, I say it wasn't Grand Prix weekend because it was a fucking sprint race. So for the sprint race, Hamilton would take pole um, and would set a new track record because the track was resurfaced between this year and last year. So more grip. And he would do it by like a hundredth of a second from Verstappen because both of the McLarens bottled their quali laps in typical McLaren fashion. So it was Lewis for the taking, and he would go on to win the sprint race. And while technically not a Grand Prix win, it is still his first win at Ferrari, and it's actually Ferrari's first sprint race win. So if you either like Lewis or Tifosi, we were starting the weekend on a bit of a high. Now, funny enough is that Norris fucked the start in the exact same place that he did last year. That's turn 6. It's that long left-hander where he just said, hey, I'm going to drive off into the gravel now. And so he rolled off. I think it was like P6 or P7. He was like P9 by the time that was all said and done. And then he was stuck in Stroll's dirty air, so he just destroyed his front left tire and couldn't make any progress. It was Lewis, Verstappen, Piastri, Leclerc. They were both able to, with the latter two, able to gobble up Verstappen throughout the course of the stint. But graining was the thing. Again, resurfaced track temp, higher track or resurfaced track surface, higher track temp. It was like 35 degrees track temperature, which is quite high, and it just ate the front tires. But yes, as a Lewis fan, less a Tifosi. Yeah, after the sprint race, I don't know, felt pretty good. I wasn't regretting my decision to stay up late to watch the sprint race. But then we get to the Grand Prix. So for quali, the McLaren drivers got it together and were 1-2 with think Verstappen P3, Leclerc P4, somebody P5, and Lewis was like P6 roll off. Might have been Sonoda actually. And it's worth noting that Piastri's pole lap then took the track record from Lewis, so that stood for less than 24 hours, but whatever. But You know how I said I was feeling good after the sprint race? Well, it very quickly sank even as the Grand Prix got underway because Lewis and Leclerc made contact, which actually broke Leclerc's front wing. But apparently Ferrari botched the setup so badly that the car was actually faster with a broken front wing. Which I don't know.
How does that work?
Um well, the unserious answer is because it's Ferrari. The serious answer is that they had way too much in terms of trying, I guess, to make the front end bite, they were running way too much downforce and it was beating the shit out of the tires. So by breaking the front wing, it actually lessened the front end aero loads and helped extend the front tire life, which is really the cars are front tire limited at China. But yeah, it was very frustrating. Now Alonso would DNF again because the brakes caught fire. Which, to be fair, I don't think that's his fault.
It's not, but I feel like it should be taken as a sign.
I agree. Because this is the only time in his career, I think, that he has DNF'd the opening 2 races of the season. Which, well, I guess if you're going to fill in that career stat, I guess better late than never. But we would fall into a bit of a rhythm for as interesting, because the sprint race was genuinely kind of fun, but the Grand Prix would kind of devolve into a typical Chinese Grand Prix. And so we fell into a rhythm and not really a whole lot of anything happened. You had Doohan having quite the argy-bargy with Hajar, which ended in Doohan getting a 10-second penalty for forcing another driver off track when he sent it in super late to try to stay ahead, almost killed Ocon in the process, and then, just like I said, drove Hajar off the track, which means that Doohan currently has more penalty points than he does World Drivers' Championship points. Yeah. And then there was a coming together with Bortoleto and somebody had a collision. I don't remember who that was, but they were pointing backwards. It might have been Bortoleto and Hulkenberg, actually.
Amazing work.
Yeah, yes. But so there was a little bit of shithousery down the back of the order. But the biggest thing was at the front. Norris was suffering from brake pedal failure through the closing stages of the Grand Prix. Not the actual mechanical brakes were fine, but the pedal travel was getting long, which is an odd thing to happen. Now I don't know if I don't actually know the braking systems on F1 cars, if they're mechanical, so like your typical like hydraulic master cylinder, or if it's like brake by wire, because it could be 2 different things, like, you know, maybe a fluid leak if it's mechanical, or like if it's brake by wire. I don't know. That would be like a failure on the rheostat. Because brake by wire, the pedal is basically just a potentiometer, and it's X position equals Y clamping force. But either way, yeah, he almost that was an issue. But he was able to hang on, and it was a McLaren 1-2 with Piastri winning, which marks McLaren's 50th 1-2 finish, and frankly was the result that everybody expected last week. But didn't quite come off due to the weather. But things would get a little bit spicy in the post race, because we would have not 1, not 2, but 3, count them, 3 cars disqualified for technical infringements. Leclerc and Gasly were disqualified for being underweight. And then Hamilton was disqualified for skid block wear aka the plank. And this is notable because the last time that happened, it was Coda in 2023, when Lewis was disqualified for the same fucking thing, and actually, ironically, so was Leclerc. So it was truly I get it. This is what it must feel like being a Tifosi. You win a sprint race, and then you're disqualified from the Grand Prix.
I mean, sometimes it really amazes me that Ferrari, as an organization, a sporting organization, has won the 24 hours of Le Mans like multiple times. Given just this how all of this unfolds, it's like sometimes it really amazes me that yes, this is the same exact Ferrari that's won the biggest race on the planet.
Yeah, I don't get it either. That yes, you can have that, but then have just shit like this. And I'm talking about like little. I mean, it's like it can't be that hard to make sure that the car is running high enough that you don't wear the skid block too much. I don't. And that's the same thing also being underweight. And the thing is, then just to be clear, the car was not underweight because of the broken front wing. Part of Parc Ferme post race is that you can replace broken parts with correct ones to make sure that the car makes minimum weight. So no, they just underfueled the car like a bunch of fucking goobers. And I just, I don't know, but it's one of those things where it's like Ferrari is like 6th in the Constructors' Championship right now because they fucked up strategy at Australia and then got double disqualified at China.
I mean, water's wet, the sky is blue, brick walls are hard.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like it's like going into a race weekend asking yourself if Ferrari is going to find some way to bottle strategy would be the equivalent of asking yourself, well, what if I jump into a swimming pool and get wet?
I hate how true that is. But you are absolutely correct. Oh well.
Also,
But
there was like going back to the Australian Grand Prix, there was like team orders between the McLarens, and I was interested in what you thought about that.
it was completely needless. Like what the fuck? Why? The whole we're gonna let him race. We're gonna let him race. Piastri gets within about a half a second of Lando, hold position. Like what the fuck are you talking about? You're gonna let them race? I just it was one of those things. They say the reason was that with they were lapping back markers and critical phase of the race. I'm like, F1 has blue flags though, so the back markers were always gonna fucking move because they are obligated to move. So I don't know. I find it needless, and I do think that if Piastri had been allowed to attack, I think that there is a very good chance that he doesn't end up backwards spun off in the grass. So, like, I don't know. But I'm actually glad that you brought up the radio thing, because Fred Vasseur was mauling after the Chinese Grand Prix about Lewis's and his communications with Ricardo Adami, his race engineer, and saying that basically that a lot of the conversation that they had, it was over actually the position swap thing, where what was played on the broadcast made it seem like Lewis didn't want to swap positions with Leclerc, when indeed Lewis was the one who suggested it in the first place, because it was obvious that Leclerc was faster. So he said Vasseur planned to talk to Stefano Domenicali about it, basically. Which I don't know if he's going to get anywhere, because Domenicali is an idiot. But I guess it's worth a try. But yes. But to circle back to a bit of Red Bull chatter, mostly because, well, they are the gift that keeps on giving. Lawson might be fucked. And I mean, like, really. There's chatter that is picking up steam rapidly that he might be replaced for Japan by Yuki.
I mean, I don't really know why, because, like, I don't think Liam Lawson is a bad driver. Like, I genuinely do not believe he's a bad driver looking at, like, his record. So it's like, I don't really know why. Like, I don't understand. What are you doing this for? Like, you're telling me you're gonna sign him, but okay, yeah, maybe he has a couple of bad races here and there, but then you're just gonna like bin him off or whatever. I mean, I guess, like, I don't know, like, it just kind of doesn't make sense to me. And now it's like, what, you're gonna have a revolving door of drivers now in the second Red Bull seat? It's like, what is actually happening? What's going on? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, do I think Liam is a bad driver? No. Do I think that he was a bit overhyped within sort of Red Bull and kind of their available pool of drivers? Yes. And do I think he was promoted too soon? Also, yes. But it would be insanity to replace him this quickly. It would be insanity to replace him this fast. And I would be curious to know if there's a. Well, I mean, to be fair, finishing what, like, P17 and Australia P16, whatever it was, and then on the road P15 in China, he got bumped up a few places due to the triple disqualification, so it was P12 in the end. But that's still not points, first of all. And most drivers got promoted because the 3 cars that got nuked all were in the points, if I remember correctly. So everybody just about was going to benefit from Leclerc, Lewis, and
Like, where did this even stem from? Like, why did such a mess?
Part of what it was, I don't remember where the initial rumor started, but the race, point blank, asked Christian Horner, basically, is Lawson fucked? And Horner refused to say no outright. Lots of beating around the bush and blah, 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 blah. But it's worth noting, I mean, even when Checo was in all kinds of shit, Horner would at least be like, no, Checo's our driver, he's staying. And Horner is being very, very vague about the prospects of Lawson in the second seat.
Which is kind of weird, because I feel like, if anything, Lawson deserves more chances than Checo got. Hey, I think Checo long overstayed the time that he was supposed to be there, and they had no problem making excuse after excuse after excuse. So it's like, what's different now? And if anything, Lawson is also, like, he's also younger too, and has more longevity with his career, as opposed to Checo, who is like, I mean, he's not super old, but like, he's also not young either. He has a family.
Mm-hmm. And that's also the part that I don't get either. Because Pierre Gasly, half a season. Albon, a season and a half. Lawson, potentially out after 2 races. Checo, 4 fucking seasons. Like, I don't understand how Checo was able to outrun the contractual Grim Reaper for 4 years. And yet all of these young drivers who were, very much at the start of their Grand Prix careers basically couldn't hold on a seat to save their fucking lives. But you mean to tell me that washed up fraud could? Like, it genuinely boggles the mind. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. But I guess with that, any closing thoughts before we roll out?
No.
Well, with that, next round is Japan in a couple weeks. So of course, we will be there, and I think that's a triple header actually, if I recall correctly. I do believe this week is the gap week. Before we roll off for that. So once that concludes, we will be here to talk about it all. Does Liam Lawson survive? Probably not. Can Ferrari get their strategy together? Also, probably no. Does Haas figure out what's wrong with their car and it stops being a tractor? Maybe. But find out on the next episode of Chicanery. Until next time, everybody.